Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. Jiu-Jitsu 2000 here today. I'm back, and today I've got an interesting video for you. Today, we're going to build a desktop computer. As you can see, I have a lot of parts here laid out on the bench. I've built a few computers in my life. It's been a while since I built one. In fact, the last time I built a computer, it was an AMD Athlon X2 4800 dual core processor. So that's how long it's been since I built a computer. Now, if you're watching this video right now, that is a good thing, because that means that all these parts back here that you can see are working as a unit, because I'm editing this video that you're watching right now on this system after it gets complete. Now, the budget that I've allotted for this computer build is around $1,500. Starting off this build is the case. This is the skeleton that all the pieces fit onto, so all the other stuff fits in here. This is a Fractal Design Meshify C Mini case. This is a micro ATX computer case. I chose this case for this build. The motherboard that I'm using in this build is the ASUS Tough Gaming B550M Plus with Wi-Fi. Now, I wanted the B550 chipset with this build, and that wasn't released until June 16th, 2020. When I first ordered a motherboard, I chose an ASUS Prime motherboard with Wi-Fi. They ended up back ordering that board, so I canceled that order and chose this. And I think this was actually a good decision going from that board to this one, because this one seems a little nicer. Now, the processor that I've selected for this build is the AMD RYZEN 9. This is the 3rd generation processor. This is model 3900X. This processor has a lot of power. If we refer back to the AMD Athlon 64X2, this is like having 2 engines under the hood. This one here has 12 cores with 24 threads. So it's like 12 engines under the hood, confusing the computer into thinking that there's actually 24. So the computing power difference between these processors is night and day. I was going to go originally with the Ryzen 3950X, but for $700 price point on that processor, it did not come with a cooling fan. So I stepped down one notch to this one, and it came with a cooling fan. Shortly after I purchased this, they came out with the 3900XT, but I went ahead and stuck with what I got, and I'm happy with the choice that I made. When you build a computer, you need storage, okay? This is called an SSD. This is a solid state drive. This is actually an older technology now compared to what's out today. This is what they call serial ATA. You can use something like this and they work real good. But in this build, I'm not going to use that type of SSD. I'm going to use what they call an NVMe. An NVMe is a small SSD that plugs into a slot on the motherboard. You can see this one here is 256 gigabytes, and I also have one here that's 1 terabyte. So I have 2 NVMe SSDs. I got a 256 for the operating system and a 1 terabyte for storage. So this is going to be my storage that I'm going to use in this build. The next component that I've selected for this build is the memory, or RAM. Now, this is DDR4 RAM, and each one of these kits is 32 gigabytes. So a total of 64 gigabytes of RAM. And I'll be honest with you, that's, in today's standards, in some cases that's considered an overkill. But I want to make sure that this computer is 100% sound and ready to handle anything that I throw at it. Now, these are 16 gigs a piece, so there's 4 sticks of 16 which comes out to, again, 64 gigabytes. This is the Vengeance RAM. So that's what I'm going to be using in this build. 4 sticks of that stuff. And this RAM is made by Corsair. To power this system, you need a power supply. I chose a gold standard Thermaltake Toughpower series. This is a modular power supply. This is a 750 watt unit. And when I say modular, what that refers to is the type of connections that go onto the power supply to the motherboard. These connections are plug and play basically. So you plug in what you need. It's not like some of them old power supplies that have a ton of wires coming off of them and you have to push wires that you don't need out of the way. That's the reason I went with a modular supply, so I don't have that issue. But this is the power supply that I chose for this build. Okay, now we're talking about the graphics card. This is something that technically I didn't even need, but I chose to go with this. I'm not a gamer, even though it says gaming on it. This card is a good card. It's a lot of performance for the money. There are a ton of cards out there on the market that are better than this one. I chose this card as a place in this build to kind of cut a little bit of cost. All the other components up to this graphics card were top of the line components. So if anything was to be upgraded in the future, this could be what could get upgraded. However, I don't think that's going to be necessary. Again, I'm not a gamer, I'm just a video editor. So this is 4 gigabytes of RAM on this card, and this is the card that I've chose for this build. I think it's going to do a good job. I really do. So right now you're looking at the hardest part of the computer build, which is getting the case out of the box. As you can see, the side of the case has tempered glass. There's a look at the back. Looks like a pretty good little case for this build. One thing that I really like about this case is these magnetic dust screens. So it's got these magnets on it and it fits right on the top. You could mount a couple fans on this top that blow air up if you choose to. So I like that. It's pretty cool. And on the front you can see I have 2 USB 3. I have the power button, a headphone jack, a microphone jack, and I think that's a reset button. But I like this case. I think this is a pretty nice little case. I'm going to go ahead and take off this glass. So you got these screws. There's 4 little screws. I'm going to leave the plastic that's on the glass until the build is complete. That'll kind of protect the glass from getting scratched and stuff. So let's pull this straight off. That's that tempered glass. Pretty cool. And then here's a look at the inside of the case. You can see there's a 120 mil fan there. There's also a fan here included with the case. And I like this bottom part here because the power supply goes underneath that and it kind of separates the build from the fans and the power supply. So it's kind of neat. This case is a lot different than cases that I built computers with in the past. This is much, much different. Very nice case. I like it. And it wasn't hard on the pocket either. It wasn't a bad purchase at all. So here is the power supply. This is, wow, that's pretty bougie. That's a little bag, and like I said, this is a modular power supply, so it comes with all the cables, and you basically use what you need. So it's pretty cool. Whatever cables you need for your build. So that's pretty cool. Comes with a little bag there. That's neat. There's some owner's manual. And this power supply will give us plenty of power to run just about anything we want to run. Wow, look at that. Very nice. Big old fan there. Smart fan on and off, and then the main on and off. Looks like a nice power supply. Very nice. And then there's the business end. That's where all the modular connectors go. So whatever you need, that's where you plug them in. So that's pretty cool. Here is the graphics card. So we'll open in that bad boy. You can see that it comes with a anti-static bag. And there's a Frisbee. We don't use Frisbees anymore, do we? And there's an owner's manual. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and open this up and take a quick look at it. Wow, not too bad. Just a good budget card that's going to perform fairly well. DVI out, so digital video out. There's a power connector there. And it doesn't have all the lights and all that. It's just a basic card. Just gets down to business and does what you need it to do. Uses a PCIe slot. It's got a little cover. That's pretty cool. They put these little covers on there to protect the card. So that's what I'm going to use in this build. So the Corsair Vengeance RAM. Again, I've got 4 sticks of this stuff. And they have the little coolers on them. So it helps dissipate the heat. 16 gigs per DIMM. So a total of 64 gigs on this build. These are the 2 NVMe drives. So this is the one for the operating system, and this is the one for the storage. So the storage one is just like that, and it's a very small module. That's what they look like. The other one, I don't like that they package them so crazy, because they're very small, very little pieces. So I will put those in that little pouch there, and they will sit over by the RAM for now till I'm ready to put this all together. So this is the motherboard. And here is some specs. So let's go ahead and take a look at this motherboard. So the first thing you see is the Wi-Fi tower thing. That comes packaged very well. Set that down for just a second. There's the I/O shield for the back. Okay, so we'll definitely need that. There's 2 SATA connectors. There is that is a thermal, I think, for the NVMe drive, and there's the screws for that as well. So I'll need that. I'll put that over there. And then we have the owner's manual, and there's a Frisbee with this one too. Pretty cool. And then the certificate of reliability. And then the best part about this whole build is this part. This is where you gain all your performance stickers. Put them on your car, put them on, and that your computer will run better than any computer out there if you put these stickers on there. Wow, that's pretty. Nice looking board. Very nice. I'm super excited about this. There's all kinds of headers and all kinds of stuff on this board. It's going to be really nice. Can't wait to get this all put together. Now the Ryzen 9. That's it right there. That is the brain of this computer. Look at the back side of it. It's pretty cool, huh? And again, the reason I chose this one is because it came with the cooling fan. The 3950 did not. And from what I understand, this cooling fan already has thermal paste on it. it does. There's a couple cables. You can see it already has thermal paste applied, but that looks like a pretty nice, it looks like a pretty nice fan. Pretty nice cooler for this build. Very nice. So we'll put this back on until we're ready, because I don't want to mess with that thermal paste. But that's the processor fan and the processor. Now what's important is I want to make sure that I count the mounting holes that this motherboard has and get the standoffs on the back here where they're in the right position to accept this board. Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 holes. So I'm going to need 8 standoffs. So I'm looking here in the case and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to just kind of put the board in there and figure out exactly where the standoffs go. Now in the back side of this case, if I take these 2 screws out, ooh, they're tight. It's probably going to have a packet full of screws that is probably going to have standoffs. Look at these little Velcro enclosures that hide all your stuff. There's all your accessories. Here's all your front panel connectors. That's kind of cool. There's 2 little trays, so if you wanted to run the older serial ATA mechanical hard drives, you could. That's kind of neat, because I have a few old 1 terabyte drives, and I like that there's these grommets here that allow you areas to put your cables through that kind of hide all the wires in the back, because back when I built my last computer you didn't have this option. You didn't have the ability to hide everything in the back like you do here. So I really like that. I think that's pretty cool. In this box of accessories, let's see, what do we have here? Looks like we have a standoff tool. There's 8 standoffs, 4 screws, 20 of those types of screws. Those are the ones you're going to mount your drives and stuff with. Some zip ties. So it comes with everything you need. There's your screws for mounting your motherboard. So that's pretty nice. You get everything you need in that kit. Very nice. So there's the zip ties for hiding stuff and 4 screws. These are the screws that are going to mount the motherboard. These are the standoffs for the motherboard and the tool for the standoffs. So we'll definitely need those 2. And then these are for all your, like your connecting your SATA drives and things like that. Probably won't need those right off the bat. And these screws, I'm not quite sure what those are for. I'll have to read and figure out what those are. Motherboard screws, 2.5, you know, like your older style drives. Power supply screws, there's 4 of them. Standoffs, 3.5-inch drive screws, standoff tool, and cable ties. That's pretty neat. I like this case. Very nice. So I'm just going to go through and put the standoffs where they need to go. And you got to make sure that you're looking at the right holes and that you're putting them in the right spots. And you want to tighten them tighter than the screws that hold the motherboard down. That way, if you ever remove the screws for the motherboard, you're not actually pulling off the standoffs. We are all set with that step. So now our motherboard will be able to be dropped in there, and it'll be able to go exactly where we need. The next step with the case prep is we need to install the I/O shield. So you always want to remember that the mouse and everything is generally towards the north or towards the top. Pop right into place. Not too difficult, it's pretty simple. Okay, now it's time to install the processor. And this is pretty simple. If you take a look at the processor itself, you'll notice that this bottom corner has a little gold area. So it's very simple. It slides in just like that and it'll drop into place. And I usually put my finger on it and then put that lever down. And that's all there is to installing the processor. The next step is going to be the cooler. So I've make sure that you have your thermal paste ready. And don't touch anything with the thermal paste until you're ready to go. I'm going to do it just like this. You're going to hook on one side. It kind of fits right down in like so. There we go. There. We're almost there. Now we want to make sure that everything's good. And we are now installed with our processor and our cooling fan. From here, we want to find on our motherboard where it says CPU fan, which is right here. And let me turn this so you can see. Right there, CPU fan. So we will plug that bad boy in right there. Boom. And now, cable management is important. So I'm going to just kind of tuck this cable, make sure it's out of the way and stuff like that, and that it looks good. Now from here, we're going to move on and install our RAM. Now you'll look at the RAM and you'll see a certain amount of pins on this side and a certain amount of pins on this side. You can see that this side has more pins than this other side, and there's a little notch in the center. So you want to correspond your RAM to where it's going to fit in the right position there. So you've got these little slots that it fits in, just like that. And before you push it down for the home run, you want to make sure that you're corresponding correctly on that little notch, like I said just a second ago. So from there, you're going to just push down on both sides until you'll feel this thing snap and it's in place. So we're going to just repeat the process 4 times. Just like that. The RAM is very easy to install. And if you don't want to go with this amount of RAM on your initial build, you don't have to. This is definitely something that you can upgrade in time. I just happen to have the extra cash with me, so I went ahead and decided to do it right away since this is going to be a video editing machine. So there is our RAM. All 4 DIMMs are installed. Now we're going to turn this bad boy and we're going to install the NVMe drives. And that's where these little standoffs and screws come in. Now these drives come in different sizes. It's different numbers and each number tells you what screw you need. So this one here, we're just going to stick that bad boy so we know that we need this screw here. So we need the small standoff part for that screw. So I'm just going to put that right there, just like that. This doesn't have to be Gorilla tight by any means. This is going to be the one that has the operating system on it. So it's the smaller of the 2 drives. So you'll basically push the piece down and the screw will go right in there. It's very simple, very easy. Don't over tighten this screw. You don't want to accidentally damage your NVMe. So that's all there is to that one. This next port here is where we're going to put our second one. And I'm kind of surprised that this motherboard does not have a cooler for this higher one as well. I mean, I think that would have been kind of neat, but for a B550 board. I guess it just wasn't necessary. Now this one goes the same way, so we need to find the right standoff. So we're gonna do the same thing like we did earlier. We're gonna put the little standoff screw in the thing, and we'll go right there.
Let's get that bad boy started.
And there we have it. Now, you noticed that the motherboard included a little thermal for the NVMe. We're not going to need that because this piece already has one on it. So we're going to go ahead and install this guy right there. That's going to be 1 terabyte of storage, which is plenty. And the one that's up top is the high speed one. This one's not as fast as the one that we're going to be booting from. These are tiny screws. I'm not used to these things so small. Just like that. So just like that. And that's basically going to stick to the NVMe, and that's going to let it cool, which I think is a pretty cool thing that they included that with this motherboard. I thought that was very cool. So that is completely installed. Both of my drives are installed now, and that was very simple. At this point, you can carry the motherboard around by the CPU cooler. So if you need to move it around or something like that, just grab this whole cooler and use that. We're going to get a hold of our motherboard, and we're going to just drop that bad boy down into position. Making sure that we've got the IO shield, everything's lined up, and we're going to look down at all of our standoffs and make sure that everything's in position. Right here where my screwdriver is touching, that's that special standoff that was already installed. That's the one that holds our motherboard in place while we put the screws in. So we're just going to put these screws in. They don't have to be gorilla tight or anything, just snug them up. Nothing too crazy. We're not holding down the Titanic here. We're just putting our motherboard in our case. The purpose of the standoffs is so that when the motherboard gets put into the case, it doesn't come in contact with metal and cause problems. And we're done mounting the motherboard. Everything is solid and ready to go. These two right there. So pull these guys out. We don't need those because they're going to be same thing as installing the RAM. We just push firmly down and everything is locked into place. That's our graphics card. Looks nice. And again, this is the component of all the things in the motherboard, or all the things in this computer build. This is the one thing that can be upgraded in the future if needed. This graphics card. Okay, the power supply is what we're going to install now. So we're going to remove these two screws here. So it's basically a little tray that the power supply sits on. So remember this from the case. We're going to get those 4 screws. Those are our power supply screws. If you look at the orientation of these screws, you can see that they're kind of offset, like this bottom one right here. This one here is offset. So you want to make sure that the power supply, that the holes correspond to where that offset is. So we'll put that screw in first. and we'll make sure all the screws mount up the way they're supposed to. So now our power supply is mounted to this plate. So now these two screws let us take the power supply out or put it in. So it's just like a drawer. The next step of this process is to take all the front panel connectors and install them where they go on the motherboard. Now this one here is the front fan, so I know where that one goes. And these, and they're labeled, so this is your hard drive LED. This one is your reset switch, and this one is your power switch, and these ones are your power LEDs. This one is your USB 3 front header, and this one is your audio on the front of the panel up top up here. So I'm going to send those through and get them plugged into the corresponding spots where they go. And you may need to refer to your manual for this. I don't think I'm going to need to. I built enough computers and I'm pretty savvy, so I'm going to look and see where things need to be, get an idea. I love these pass-throughs. These are nice. Pass through all the wires you need, and then you can shove back what you don't need. Okay, now we're going to plug these two guys in right here. I had to remove the graphics card because I couldn't get my hands in there. So now the power button, which is this one, will go right next to it, right there. And I have this one, which is reset switch, right there. So this one goes right there. And then this one is the hard drive LED. It'll go right here. And I'm sorry that if my arm's getting in the way, but I have to get those wires. So that's the front panel connectors. They all go right there just like that. And that's probably the hardest part right there. That's tough putting those in. But I'm done. And the front case fan goes right there, and you can see that I've routed these wires nice and clean. I'll probably clean them up a little bit more before it's all said and done. The other case fan goes right here where my finger is, so that's this guy right here. And I'm gonna leave that thing in a bundle for now. I'll clean it up here in just a minute. I know this is probably hard to see, but that's where that goes. So both of my chassis fans are connected now. So this port is the USB 3 front header, and I just stuck it through this other grommet because it's very simple. It just goes right there, just like that. That's all there is to it. It's a very simple connection. So now my USB 3 front headers are connected. Now this port where my finger is, this is the front panel audio connector. So I'm going to go ahead and connect that guy right there. Now it's just a matter of routing these wires so they're out of the way and a nice clean look. So right now it's about cable management. On the back side here, I'm going to use my first zip tie to clean up all this stuff. This is basically all the front panel stuff. So this is on the back side. So that's kind of nice to have these little zip ties, because they definitely help keep things clean, and not just clean on the back side. Back side doesn't matter. What matters is the front, and that's what we're trying to make sure is really clean is the front of the computer inside. So you can see that my cable management so far looks pretty good. Looks decent. So after going through all these power cables that are modular, I've found that all these I don't need right now. So these are the ones that I need. So I'm going to start with the CPU pin, CPU cable rather. That's this guy. It's an 8-pin. So it goes up top up here in the motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that guy in. And it's going to be probably a little difficult to give you guys a view of that because I got these big old hands, but that one goes right there. There we go. So that's the first cable. The second one is going to be the 24-pin for the motherboard. So that would be this guy. And it just goes just like so. So that one's in. And the third one is this one. Right here. That's for my graphics card. So this guy goes right here. Just like this on the graphics card. Boom. Just like that. And then the rest of this stuff just goes down into these spots where I can manage my cables. Now this processor cable management is very simple. There's a flap right here on the back where my finger's popping through, and I'm going to run that straight out there. Hopefully I'm able to do that without getting in your way too much where you can see. So that goes just like that, right out that hole. That one's simple. Now the 24-pin right here, this big one, it's kind of the same thing. We're going to go right through this area right here, and we're going to just run it right through there. And that should give us a good way of hiding this cable. This one's a little bit bigger. Hopefully you're seeing what's going on there. So I'm just pulling it through from the back side. So that's what we got there. And then of course down below the graphics card. Now I don't like how it's got this extra little bit on there, but I'm going to try to run this one through the side here, through this port here. So let's just run that guy through there, and then we'll try to find a pretty way of doing it, which there's not really a lot of pretty ways when it comes to that one. So I'm kind of not really digging that too much, how that looks, but I'll look at it a little more and see if I can find a better way of hiding that. But as of right now, that's kind of how my cable management looks. It's not too bad. Could be better, but could be a lot worse. So this is the one that come from the processor up top here. This is the 24-pin, and this is the graphics card. So I need to plug those in to here, into this modular power supply. So this is the CPU. That's going to go right there. Then the big one, the 24-pin, this one's actually going to take up 2 ports. It's going to take this port and this one right next to the CPU. So one of them will go right there, and then the other one will go right there. Come on. There we go. There. I like these modular power supplies. They tend to do a pretty good job. Now this one is the one for the graphics card, and it's going to go in either one of these terminals. So I'm going to go ahead and put the power supply in, because this one's not long enough. I want it to go in the bottom port. There we go, we got it. So now we will get these 2 screws that hold the power supply in. Tighten those bad boys. We'll go ahead and install this plate to protect the back of the motherboard. That's pretty cool. I just really like this case, and I like the way everything works on this case, man. This cable management stuff is really nice to be able to hide this stuff in the back. I really like it a lot. I'm ready to install the rear cover. So we're just gonna go like this, because all of our wires and stuff are out of the way. We're just gonna slide that bad boy forward, just like so, like that. We'll tighten this. We'll tighten this. Now that back panel is on, so we have the computer enclosed, and it's starting to take shape. There's a look at the back, what the back looks like. Here's a look at the side. I did my best to manage these cables correctly. This one here on the graphics card, I wasn't so happy about that one, but it is what it is. That's the best I could do with that. So now I'm gonna leave this side panel off until I know that everything's working and running. And once I've verified that everything's good on here, then I'll put this glass on and we'll see how that works. Okay, I've got the computer installed into where I'm gonna be doing all my work. Let's go ahead and push this power button and see what happens. Nothing happens, so the first thing I check is the power supply switch. Aha, I see some lights. Now let's push that button. Okay, looks like we are alive. Now I gotta do a few checks. I'm putting my hand underneath the graphics card. I can feel a little bit of air. I can also feel the front fan is working, the processor fan is working, and this other fan here is working. So all my fans are working, and at this point it just comes down to installing my operating system on the computer and getting to work. And there's a quick look at the BIOS screen. You can see that it shows all the RAM installed. It shows the processor, the motherboard. Wow. 3 fans running. This is super cool. This is so much different than what I'm used to seeing. I'm used to the old BIOS. 59 degrees is the temperature of my CPU. So right now I'm in the process of installing my operating system, my Linux operating system, because I don't want nothing to do with Microsoft or Bill Gates. And I'm looking at that fan. That fan is cool. It just changes colors and it looks pretty neat. So I have the operating system installed. Look at that system monitor. 12 cores and 24 threads. And you can see the RAM says 62 gigabytes. That is crazy. This is a tough machine. Well folks, I want to say thank you for joining me on this video today on building my video editing PC. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun for me. Please feel free to leave your comments down below, like this video, share this video, and as always, again, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.